Greetings, everyone. My name is Stephen Neely. I am your host for Meetup number 68. This is the virtual Dalcroze Meetup, and we've been running off and on over the last year or so a series called Lessons from Our Teachers, where we are interested in talking about some of the uh, special Dalcroze teachers who did so much for us. And Marta Sanchez's name has finally made it to the top of the list, and we're just so thrilled to have 55 minutes to talk a little bit about Marta. We've invited a couple specific names, but I know there's all sorts of other faces in this room who also worked with Marta, and so whether your name is on the agenda or not, it's okay. We want to hear everybody take a minute or two to tell us a little bit. We have a couple announcements before we get going. But when we get going, we have, I think, four people who we've asked to just tell us one good story, take 5 minutes, tell us a little bit um, about your relationship or how you met Marta and what you think of as you are as you're remembering her. I feel like any of us who really spent any time with her could by ourselves fill up the hour, no trouble. I got no trouble at all. Before we get into that, I want to introduce Emma Shubin, who is in Luxembourg, who is one of our co-hosts of the virtual Dalcroze meetup, and Veronica Bileski, our favorite friend in Boston. Veronica, do you want to share any of these announcements, or do you want me to?
Uh, I'll let you share because I'm still coughing.
No trouble. Well, it's good to see you, and I'm so glad that we're all together. The Before we get to, I guess, to the announcements, I should very quickly send us to our breakout room. So if you've not been here before or haven't been here in a while, you might not know that the VDM wants you all to meet each other. And so today it looks like we're going to have four quick breakout rooms where we ask if you, once you get there, if you would just introduce yourself, tell everybody where you're from, and who do you teach? And you have only 2.5 minutes. That's all the more time you get for 4 or 5 people to say, where are you at? What's your name? And who do you teach? Just say hi to each other. And then we're going to be right back because we got so much to talk about today. Ready, set, go. All right, we did it. So maybe hopefully you got a chance to say hi to everyone. This is exactly what we think the virtual Dalcroze meetup is. It's our international friends, all with things in common, and what a joy it is to get to meet. I don't think I got it on the recording, so I'm just going to say in just what I know off the top of my head, we have friends here from Brazil, Canada, Mexico, Finland, England, New York City, California, Geneva, Switzerland. If I didn't say Canada, I mean, it's really quite a nice crowd. And what cool people. I mean, goodness, who wouldn't want to show up to this? This is the best. So before we get to the main discussion, we do have a couple quick announcements. We'll put the agenda in the chat if you haven't clicked it yet. Coming up this weekend, this coming for those of us in the West, this coming Saturday, and those of you on the other side of the world, it might be Sunday morning. Sylvie Morganegg is offering a masterclass for the virtual Dalcroze meetup. Sylvie was the director of studies at the Institute Jacques Dalcroze, Music and Movement, for like 20 years. She's amazing. She also was a student of Marta Sanchez at one point. That's how I first met Sylvie. Was she came to Carnegie Mellon so that she could hang out with Marta as back in those days. Sylvie is going to be offering a 90-minute masterclass this coming Saturday. And if you can get to it, you really should. She's amazing. And she has I just love to be in the room with her. The pacing and sort of just her countenance, just her sort of way of being in the room is just so lovely to witness. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I hope that if you haven't registered yet, please do. And the other big announcement is we really want to brag about Emma and Veronica. We finally talked them into offering a short course for the virtual Dalcroze meetup, the nature of which has to do with starting new programs in places where there aren't any. So whether you're looking to start a brand new school or just get one class going in a church basement, or you're looking for a way to collaborate with a music program in your city, or you have other entrepreneurial ideas about how music and movement could be introduced to a new community, this is the short course for you. Emma and Veronica have been really working hard at all of those things for many years, have learned a lot of hard-won lessons, and have organized what they know into a 6-week short course. And so we are really excited to feature that. Whether you're doing that work currently or you think there's a chance you might in the future, we want to encourage you to consider signing up. And you can attend live or you can watch the recordings, and all of that and more can be found at virtualdalcroze.org. After those two things, we have 2 more masterclasses coming up, one with Fumiko Bauer in April and one with Tamé DeVoe in June. So we will be telling you more about that as things come up. Today,
Can I just jump in with this one
please.
question? So we had a participant named Heather Lander email us, and I just wanted to throw this out to the community. She was asking, I am looking for academic papers that reference the use of Dalcroze in secondary high school music classes or with this age range. So I guess we're looking at maybe ages 13 to 18. And so if anybody here knows of anything, you can pop it in the chat or you can email us at virtualdalcroze@gmail.com. Or, if you can point us in some directions, that would be great.
Excellent. Thank you. To that end, also, if there's ever anything the VDM can do for anybody's research or the work that you're doing, the way that we get a lot of our programming for the meetups is just because people who have been following us write in with a pet project or a little question, and a lot of those have turned into great discussions. Well, today, I said before we got going that we've been running this series called Lessons from Our Teachers, and we're thinking about who are these sort of like big names, at least in our lives, who of these teachers who have just, have changed lives really, I'm not even being dramatic about it. Marta Sanchez was one of these powers, these forces of nature, who just contributed so much for so many years. She was tenured professor at Carnegie Mellon University, where I am now at, for 40 years. She was here. And when she passed away, we renamed our Dalcroze Training Center in her name. And I'm so glad we did. When we first discussed, we wanted a way to honor her. And we said, well, maybe we'll put her name in the title. And there was a part of me, of course, wanted to honor Marta, but then another part of me was like, it's so wordy. It's so many words. Is it a good title? And I hesitated just because of the wordiness of it. And I like things kind of tidy and clean and pretty in that way. And I have to say, I'm so pleased that we went with the wordy choice, because what it has done for us is it has reminded us of our sort of leading mentor and what were her ideals and her principles. How did she carry herself is what I think about all the time. Every time I say the Marta Sanchez Dalcroze Training Center, I think, oh yeah, we're kind of living in her shadow. And it's a really good shadow. I'm just as quick as I can. I'm going to show you. So the first, if Veronica said, I'd never seen a picture of her before, which was so, funny to me because I just take it for granted. And of course, all sorts of people haven't seen her before. If you had to be of a certain generation and time to have met her. She was a very elegant woman. And she had the longest strides of any person I've ever walked beside. And I swear she was like 5'3" or something. Like, I don't know how big she was, but she was not very tall. And she walked with these huge strides, and she just, those like floated across wherever she was going. And so I think of that. Here's a picture of Marta and Annabelle. That's Annabelle Joseph and Marta Sanchez, probably in the late 70s, early 80s is my guess. Judy, you're muted if you're trying to talk. So we'll try to get Judy, who knows all the ins and outs. Maybe it's much earlier.
That looks like it's the early 70s.
Okay, there you go. So this is Marta and Annabelle Joseph, and Annabelle's still with us. I was just with her last week. We went and saw her and played the piano and said hi. Here's how tall. Now I'm only 5'8", and there's Marta looking up at me at my undergraduate graduation. So just to give you an idea how tall she was not a very tall person. And then the one story I'll just lead with is when she was not well at the and there's so many things we could say, but I just think this sort of is a tribute to kind of how powerful of a figure she was internationally. She taught all around the world multiple times, world over. She was the definition of world traveler teacher. And when we knew she was not well, it had been sort of revealed to her students that she was not well. And she died of pancreatic cancer. She had a major sort of following, and I'm sure still does, in Japan. And the word kind of went out to the Japanese friends that they were going to make paper cranes for her. And I don't know if you know that story, but there's a sort of a folklore that if you fold 1,000 paper cranes, then it brings goodwill to the person they were made for. And Toru Sakai visited Marta in Rhode Island, where she was retired at that point, and he brought his regular luggage, and then he brought a whole nother suitcase, a large suitcase, and it didn't have 1,000 paper cranes. It was completely full of these strung paper cranes. And I have
5,000.
one of the sets here that just sort of lives at the Dalcroze Training Center. You see how many? Like, it's so long. It's like it's more than 3 feet long, and there's and apparently there's 1,000 here. And so, like, the number of hours and the number of people it would have taken to do all of that, I think is just one visible way of seeing the love that was poured out to her. I'm going to stop talking. I need some other people to say. We've asked 4 good friends, and of course there were so many more. And so to all of you who knew her and loved her, please, I hope no one feels any slight that you weren't the first names that were grabbed. It was really just kind of the quick first names. And so and there'll be time at the end for everybody to hopefully chime in. We know Leslie Upchurch has to leave a little bit early today, so we've asked Leslie if she got 5 minutes to just tell us a story or tell us a little bit about working with Marta. Leslie's first.
Leslie, I will be your gracious timekeeper, but I promise I won't be too in your face, but I'll let you know when you've...
I actually wrote it, so I think I won't go too long. So
Well,
Marta was a woman of few but well-placed words. When I started in her class, I enjoyed moving to her exquisite music. I did not always know the words that labeled what she was teaching. I learned through experience, and though it was over 50 years ago, I remember how the experiences informed my piano playing. I started thinking in phrases and in the momentum of the music. Anacrusis, crusis, and metacrusis seeped into my thoughts as I practiced my piano music. I once shared something I learned from Marta with my piano teacher, Harry Franklin. He said, "She's not the piano teacher." I never said her to him. I never said anything about her again to him. In the initial classes I had with her, she always came to the center of the room at the end of the class to say something. I did not go up to her because I had another class to quickly get to. Then we had a quiz. I most likely failed the quiz because I had not gone up to hear those well-placed words. I absolutely walked up to her to hear those words after that. I felt extremely privileged to have had training that was purely music through Eurythmics with no emphasis on being a teacher. I admit I struggle with saying so much today because the academic field has changed and requires more explanations. I had the opportunity to experience so much more before I decided to learn to teach Dalcroze Eurythmics. And an additional tidbit, it was so, kind of free form when we had this going on. Like hippies used to show up in the 1970s. They just wanted to come and kind of float around the room during the summer program. And they had no idea that, they had a musical term or anything like that. So I really feel, as I said, extremely privileged about having the opportunity to just move and learn in this like almost intuitive way. Harry Franklin, my piano teacher, was once the head of the music department after the time I was there. He was acting head, and he went to one of her classes. He said, "You must have ESP with those students." He had no idea what she was offering or how much it was impacting the musicality of the students in the room. That's it.
Thank you so much. So much. And that was just lovely. There will be so much to talk about once we let our friends share a little bit. Elda, I think Elda is second on the agenda. So this is Elda Nelly Trevino Flores in Mexico. Elda, the floor is yours.
Hi, hello everyone. I would like to share some feelings that I still have nowadays, even though I met Marta in 1996 here in Monterrey, in my hometown, when she came to Monterrey to give a workshop on the Bastian piano method for the music store of my grandmother. They were friends since long ago. Anyway, I knew that Marta was a very fine Dalcroze teacher, and I heard about the approach before, but I never experienced that. So I approached her and I called her before she arrived to Mexico to please ask her to give a Dalcroze demonstration when she came. So when she was here in Monterrey, I attended the first Dalcroze Eurythmics lesson in my life, and that was with Marta. And I fell in love immediately with the approach, the way she was teaching, and besides all the music that and didactic strategies that I learned from her, the lessons, the life lessons that she gave to me are invaluable. The first one is generosity. She was a very, very generous person, and particularly, I think, with the people from Latin America. She always helped me in regard of being able to get scholarships to attend Carnegie Mellon summer programs. And she was up to everyone's needs, personal, academic. And even though one person had trouble to learn something or to do any exercise correctly, she always made that person feel special and capable of achieving the right way or the best way to do a specific exercise. And I think that's one of the things that I treasure the most from her. And I have an anecdote. Once I was in the piano improvisation class with her, and I was sitting at the piano, and she was teaching about closed keys modulation, and she was specifically talking about A flat key. And she was repeating at one time and another time how much she hated A flat. She didn't like A flat. She was talking about how uncomfortable key it was and so on. And then after she finished talking, and I asked her, what key do you want me to start playing? And she said, well, why don't you play in A flat? A flat would be a wonderful key for you to play in. And in the 5 minutes before, she was talking about how terrible A flat was. And I finally had to play in A flat. And well, I have several anecdotes like that, very funny anecdotes. And the last time that I saw her was in the Pittsburgh airport. We had to take separate flights at the same time, more or less, and she rented a car, and she asked me to drive her to the airport in the rental car. So when we said bye to each other, she said, well, dear Elda, I will help you. I will always be with you to help you. And I still hear those words in my mind. And whenever I am hesitating about continuing in the world of Dalcroze, or when I have a problem related to making music with Dalcroze, I always think of her, and I think of her words every time. And also, I would like to share that one of the most beautiful things that also Marta did for me is that she introduced me to Iramar, who is here. I met Iramar through Marta, because I was looking for an international Dalcroze professor to come to Mexico to one of the first music education festivals that I did. And the first name that I asked her, who do you suggest? And the first word she said, Iramar. I have my friend Iramar, who is from Brazil, and he speaks Spanish very well, and so on. So, well, I'm thankful for meeting Iramar through Marta. Thank you.
Yay, thank you so much. Judy, now you're gonna have to limit yourself. Judy could easily fill hours and hours, because she spent maybe as much time with Marta over many years as any of us had. This is my dear friend and Carnegie Mellon Marta Sanchez Dalcroze Training Center pedagogy faculty, Judy Cagley.
Thank you. I met Marta in September of 1963. as a frightened to death 17-year-old coming from a very small town to Carnegie Mellon. And one of the things I think attracted me to Eurythmics was that it was the only thing that was going on there that I was on a level playing field with all of the other students, because I had had very poor instruction, very limited experience. And when we started Eurythmics, it was all together. So I was with her from then until the week before she passed away. I picked Toru up at the airport, and actually he had a big suitcase which was filled with those cranes, and then he had, I think, a manila envelope with some spare underwear. That was all he came from Japan for that week, and we had a wonderful time. And Marta, although she was just when I left on Friday and I got word the next Saturday that she had passed away, she was getting up we were staying at her sister's house, and she would get up every morning, get dressed, full makeup, hair perfect, and walk after we had our breakfast into the living room and review videotaped exams and teaching examples for a certain number of hours. Marta was a musician, but she knew how to live. And if you turn to elegance in the dictionary, there would be her picture. And she did. She walked as though she were on railroad tracks. I saw her as she was dressed up to go to a concert with Nelson Whitaker, one of her colleagues. And she had on not stiletto heels, but high, very gracefully beautiful formed heels, and a pencil skirt and a Shirley Lamb coat, and all just so elegant. And I was sitting in the student union. She saw me sitting there and she said, "What's the matter?" Well, of course, I was heartbroken, as happens when you're in college. She sat down and never left for 2 hours and talked about that. So she was always there for somebody. In the course of time, I was traveling companion, roommate. I'm sorry. Are you still there? I was getting called. So yeah, we went to Japan. I had never had a passport, and she said, I said, "Marta, next time you go to Geneva, let me know." She said, "Well, you're going this time." I said, "Marta, I don't have a passport." She said, "You'll get a passport." I said, "I don't have a place to stay." She said, "You'll get a place to stay." It happened that way when we were in Japan, different things. I could write the Encyclopedia Britannica. I spent a whole year with her intensively doing transcription from original manuscripts that are included in her dissertation, the Villancicos of Iribarren. She considered my son to be her grandchild because both his dad and I were her students. So I wouldn't even know where else I mean, I could go on and on and on, but Martin knew what was good, and it was always better to have a little cookie and a little espresso than it would be to have a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't very good. She ate like a bird, just a teeny little bit. The last week when we were together, she had a very good appetite. And I have to say one more thing. I would be remiss if I did not bring greetings from Annabelle Joseph, a dear friend and colleague that was part of the traveling that we did. I was always the nuts and bolts person. I wasn't the faculty, but I got to tag along in the faculty venues because I did a lot of the administrative work for the center and also taught children and many other things. But Annabelle has been a dear friend since 1970. And so I see her as often as I'm able to in the residence where she's living now. And we reminisce. One of the joys of getting older is that you have such a wonderful history. One of the sadnesses is there are fewer and fewer people who can share it. But we do. We sit and reminisce about things that happened. And she was very fond of Marta was very fond of Itamar and all of the different people who are here today. I could tell a story about each one, at least one story. If I have, is there any questions? I'll talk later, but I think that's enough.
Good. Thank you so much, Judy. And the last person on the agenda, and then we will have time for more people to share a little bit, is Marja-Leena. So Marja-Leena Juntunen in Finland. I also met Marja-Leena at Carnegie Mellon spending some time with Marta. Marja-Leena.
Thank you. Well, I spent a year in Geneva in 1988 and 89, and that was fun. Yes, Ramari, yes, I really enjoyed that year. And after coming from there back to Finland, I got very interested in how Dalcroze was applied and used in professional training of musicians. So then at the same time, a colleague of mine had been studying with Martha for some months, and she said, well, you should go to study with Marta to Carnegie Mellon. And then I found out that I could, apply to be a Fulbright scholar, and I got that, and I got to Carnegie Mellon, but I hadn't ever met Marta. I just heard this recommendation that she's a lovely person and a good teacher, and so I went there, and the first week I met Marta. She offered me to be her teaching assistant, and of course I said yes, because that kind of resolved my problems, or I didn't pay any tuition for my doctor's training, which was great. And then I started to teach this one of the 3 lessons for freshmen that were offered for freshman students that were studying music in different instruments and so on. And so I asked Marta what I should do, and she said, well, you know what you do. And just then I of course I had the syllabus for the course, but she never told me what I should do. And I was so kind of almost mad, because I was like, how could I know what I'm supposed to teach there? And she totally trusted me and gave me all this freedom. So the whole year, she never told me what I should do. She never asked me what I had done, and she never came to see my lessons. And then it took for me for a while to kind of realize that was actually kind of a perfect training to be a Dalcroze teacher in a way, because of course I was having lessons with her and also following her lessons when she taught the other classes and so forth and so on, and the master's program as well. But that kind of trust and freedom, I think, was really good education to be a Dalcroze teacher. And she always reinforced, kind of emphasized that you have to find your personal way to do this, and there's nobody to tell you, and you have to kind of find your own voice. And so that was really, really good Dalcroze education. But I remember that kind of the confusion that came with that experience. And I think it's sometimes, or many times, it was very confusing to study with her, because she was not very clear in her description of like what she was asking for. So, and if you asked her, she said, well, you just find out. And that was actually because she was then very clear in her improvisation. So she really taught through music, because verbally she could possibly not explain very well what she wanted, but she could tell all that through her improvisation. So then you just had to trust that once she starts to play, then you know what you're supposed to do. And that was also a wonderful experience. I think it was also, I mean, she had this, maybe Elda was saying about the same thing, this care and the trust. And I remember once she went away, she asked me to go and live in her house and take care of her parrot and the house. So there I was living in her house, and living with this parrot, Pedro, which was like awesome. And he was like, I'm Pedro, and I like this and that. And when I tried to sing or play the piano, the Pedro was competing. So finally I had to kind of quit practicing in the house, because Pedro didn't really let me do that. But it was fun. But she's really, I mean, amazing how she kind of trusted me in every way. She was also very strict what she wanted, but at the same time very caring and really embodied the so-called pedagogical love. And even though she was strict, she was very flexible at the same time. One time I said that, well, I should actually go to Cuba for 2 weeks to a workshop, and it was in the middle of a semester. And then she just said, well, you have to do what you have to do. And then she just let me go away for a couple of weeks, even though I had all the responsibilities. And so, yeah, I learned a lot through all the opportunities she gave me. She invited to teach me in the pre-college program and then in the summer programs. And that was a huge experience. So it was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen, may I say one more thing?
Sure.
That I didn't say? All right. Talking about her lesson planning, and I can remember seeing her with a post-it up in the corner of a piece of paper, just a small post-it note, and a few things dashed on there. And I thought, this lady just has such courage that she'll go out with just that little piece of paper and teach a whole hour class. Well, later on, as colleagues during the summer, we shared an apartment in the dormitory, and I got to watch the process of that, which was she had everything all spread out on the bed, all these papers, all these music, everything. And she would stand there and she would hum to herself and she would clap, and she would take some steps, and she would go through a lesson, a whole lesson. And then at the end of it, she would write down 2 or 3 phrases of notes that looked like a half and 2 quarters, something like that. And then she would, and her bywords were, Annabelle and I have laughed about this so many times, not just in music, but in other ventures as well. The 2 questions were, what if, ... And the answer was, why not? So she always was a believer in the possibility of what is, why not, but she made it look so effortless. I saw her spend hours planning these classes. So thank you for letting me share that part.
Thank you. The Marielena's experience that she described was very similar to mine. The first classes she ever gave me to teach were with the little kids on Saturday mornings, and she just said, go. And she gave me nothing. I was a junior. I didn't have any pedagogy background. I didn't know anything, but I had taken her class. She said, you've taken my class. You know some things. And then she also did not look. She asked me a couple questions, but almost nothing. And the whole point was, you can do this. That was what was sort of giving me, go figure it out. You can, I believe in you to figure this out. It was such a lovely thing. And then I was her graduate assistant for 2 years, every class, every day for 2 years. And I'm sitting, taking attendance and just sitting on the side, taking notes. And then every so often, with no notice, no advance warning, she'd look at me and she'd say, your turn. And what she meant was, take over the class with no preparation. I had no idea it was coming. Your turn, go ahead. And then I would, and then I'd look at her with fear in my eyes, and she said, go on. And so then I'd try to figure out where we were and what we were doing, and I'd try to go. And then this was still very early in my journey, and I'd get going, and then it would either end one of 3 ways. Either I'd be teaching along, and then I would get to a dead end. I didn't know what to do, and so I'd look at her with fear in my eye, and it was an obvious, terrible ending. And then she'd get up, and then she'd either pick up where I left off, or she'd go back and reteach what I failed at teaching, or I would come to the end, and I thought I was done, and then I'd look to her, and I was feeling kind of good about myself. But then I would know if I did well, because she either would pick up where I left off and keep teaching, which meant I did pretty okay, or she'd go back and reteach what I failed at teaching. And then I could see, oh crap, I totally missed everything. And then the third option was, I'm in mid-teaching, and she would stand. And if she stood up while I was teaching, that meant I was done. And time to abort. And so I got that quite a bit for a couple of years, and it was such a gift. Again, we could keep on going, but I know there's some other faces in this room. I want to ask Stephen Moore maybe if he would just tell us anything. This is Dr. Stephen Moore, who is also one of our primary faculty members and our diplome superior at the Marta Sanchez Dalcroze Training Center. So I'm going to ask Stephen if he's got anything to share.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just lost the picture there. Okay. Yeah, I was going to tell one story. I was just amazed with her playing. And because I played jazz, she was interested in my jazz playing. I was quite stunned. So she asked me to write a book with her, and that totally stunned me. But she pointed me to one book that she liked, and I studied that book. And so I happened to be, my parents lived in Rhode Island, so we had a little bit of a connection there. So I went down to visit her on the first time we were going to talk about our book. And I had done all this research about different piano books, and I was so excited about this. And she said, well, what do you want to tell me? And so I said, well, I've done blah, blah, blah. And I started talking on, did a little playing. And she said, she just put her hand down and said, play 2 notes. And I said, sure. So I played CD, and she said, what can you do with those 2 notes? And so this went on for a half hour to an hour, just exploring those 2 notes. And this was the start of the book. And I felt so, I don't know, it's like I was on a different planet. I just completely kind of lost everything. But then I was amazed at what we did with those 2 notes. So that was, even though she was an amazing improviser, she could boil everything to the essence and just start there. So that's it. That's one of my favorites. Haunting story, but favorite story.
So good. Well, friends, we've got just under 20 minutes, and so we try to set up the meetups where we can, have a little bit of some people share, and then we have some time to talk or ask questions or banter. I saw Iramar's got his hand up. Maybe he can talk with us a little bit. Dory, I see you next.
Est-ce que Françoise, tu peux traduire pour moi? Dans ma formation professionnelle, je dois beaucoup à Marthe parce qu'elle a vécu à Genève une année où elle était prof dans toutes les classes professionnelles.
Attends, Iramar, attends-moi. He owes a lot to Marta because she has been teaching 1 year, a whole year in Geneva, and Iramar could take part or host all her professional teaching there.
Ma formation professionnelle, je dois à Martha, comme je dois aussi à Madame Marie-Louise Attarnaud, qui pour moi, si aujourd'hui je suis encore prof de rythmique, c'est grâce à Malou et grâce à Martha.
Thanks to Marta and to Malou Attarnaud, the both people were his teachers, and thanks to them, he's still teaching Eurythmics now.
Et elle m'a permis de sortir pour la première fois de la Suisse, parce qu'un jour, elle m'a croisé, elle m'a dit, tu vas à Pittsburgh. J'ai dit, mais je ne peux pas, je ne parle pas anglais.
Okay, and she gave to Iramar the first opportunity to leave Switzerland because she told him to go to Pittsburgh. And Iramar said, no, I cannot because I don't speak English.
Et elle m'a dit, non, aucun problème. Il y a Eldanel qui parle très bien l'espagnol et elle va traduire tous tes cours, il n'y a pas de problème. Et c'est la première fois que je suis venu à Pittsburgh et j'ai enseigné aux enfants de Stefanelli et aussi j'ai été avec Maria-Elena aussi. Et c'était des choses qui restent dans mon cœur.
So he went to Pittsburgh, and as you maybe understood, he met Elda Nelly, and Marta told Iramar that Elda would translate everything for Iramar, and he also met Marilena Runten and qui encore? And Stephen, yes,
Yeah, Stephen Moore.
and he could also teach Stephen's children there in Pittsburgh.
Yes. Et je laisse tous mes bons souvenirs de tout ce que Martha a apporté à l'Institut de Genève.
and he's leaving or transmitting all the nice memories he has from Marta. He's giving this forward. He's sharing that with his students in Geneva.
Thank you, Françoise.
Je t'en prie.
Thank you. Thank you to you both. What else? Oh, Dory, your hand was up. Go ahead.
I wanted to share that Marta and I were both freshmen at Carnegie because I entered at the age of 17 in the same year. I think that was Marta's first year or maybe second at Carnegie Mellon. It was then Carnegie Tech. And she was so excited because I'm originally from Argentina and spoke Spanish. And so she and I would commiserate in the class also in Spanish. But and we became like close friends, almost peer, even though I'm not sure that she was obviously older, but it was one of those friends that we would meet in the hall on the way to the gym and chatter away in Spanish. But my first impression of Marta was here I am, the only New Yorker in the freshman class in Pittsburgh from the High School of Music and Art, big shot type, and knew nothing about Dalcroze, Eurythmics, or anything like that. And we come into the class, and all these guys also, macho men in the class. And the first thing she tells us to do is to stand up. We are trees. And how does a tree behave? And it was the most amazing experience of my life because I realized that she was the only instructor of the whole faculty that enabled us, the musicians, to self-express about our feelings and ourselves through her class. And there were many conversations within the class about our impression. And we were babies back in the late 50s. I hate to date myself, but in a couple of years before Marta's passing, my husband and I were up in Rhode Island and connected with her, and she shrieked. She at the time was very preoccupied with her ill sister, but she met with us and was so excited, and we reviewed that whole first year of our getting to know each other. And I do not sit at the piano ever without seeing Marta in my mind, especially when it comes to things like playing Bach in perfect rhythmic continuity. And it was an amazing experience. And after my first year at Carnegie, they kept insisting, my family, that I return to New York and go to Juilliard. And I said no, because Juilliard at the time did not have Eurythmics. So Marta, I have to say, along with Dalcroze, shaped who I am as a musician.
Thank you so much, Tori. It's so great to have you here. Francoise, is that a hand?
Well, it's very moving what you're saying, Dorita. And I think that those great teachers, they leave such a deep imprint in us. And it's not only about music, it's also about being a human being. And I remember Marta when I was maybe 16 or 17, I met her for the first time in Geneva during a summer course, and I was very much impressed. And I remember her also being so enthusiastic and giving me lots of confidence and courage, saying, Ali, go ahead, do what you want to do. And that's really priceless in life.
Absolutely.
And that's wonderful. And I have also a question for you all. Do you have any recordings of her piano improvisation? Because I remember her energy and it was very interesting what she played. But I don't have it in my ears anymore, and I would be so glad if we could share some of that.
So actually, Marta, it was her idea, I'm quite sure, in the 90s, in the early 90s, probably early or mid 90s, decided that the Dalcroze Training Center at Carnegie Mellon should record most of the summer courses. And so we had, and still have, boxes and boxes of VHS tapes. And we've converted many of them to digital. Sadly, at the time that we started converting them, we realized that many of them weren't retrievable. They had sat too long. But we have quite a bit. We have quite a bit of those archives. They're very grainy. You know, the video quality is not good, but the audio is not terrible. And so we are actually in a renewed conversation actually with our library system here on the campus. The library system has agreed to take on those archives under their umbrella. So rather than it sitting kind of in my closet, which is kind of the equivalent to my school closet, that's actually going to be officially housed in the Carnegie Mellon library system, with the hope that much of it will be accessible online, so that anybody could research. You know, if you just need some examples of some teaching from the 90s and you want to see Marta, and there's actually all sorts of people in those tapes, which will get the right permissions before any of that can happen. But you know, there's a fair archive here that we know is very valuable. It actually influenced the virtual Dalcroze meetup very much, and that right from the beginning, there wasn't a question that we were going to record these meetings and that we were going to record those master classes and try to make them available for future, you know, for future consumption for future generations. And so Marta's, you know, led with that back in the 90s, like she was somehow aware of that, which is really a lot. There was a lot about her that was kind of like that. She was very, very forward thinking. She really was a visionary in many ways. And so we do. And Francoise, the next time I have a chance that I can sit down with some of those, I'll see if I can find a couple that I can shoot your way. We'll see if we can find something
really
or two
nice.
that we
Thank
can
you.
share.
But what
We all
would
can
be
be on the
also
lookout.
interesting is if you could send also to the whole community just a notice when the library of
Yes.
your university is ready to share that.
Yeah, I think there's a fair, the quick timeline might be 2 years from now. So it'll be somewhere in there. You know, we have a lot, but there's a lot to do. And but it's an active goal, and we've gotten some funding, and we've made some new connections in the last year that didn't exist prior to about a year ago. So I'm very excited about it.
Thank you very much. I have just a small question about Leslie Upchurch. You told something at the end of your presentation about your piano teacher asking her about ESP. What is an ESP? I don't know what it is.
Oh, well, Leslie had to leave early. Extra ESP, I believe, is extrasensory perception, which is the idea that you can read minds. It's sort of like a silly way that people say, oh, you must be able to read minds. You have a superpower. And so he was saying that she had a superpower. Extrasensory perception.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. We still have 5 minutes. Anybody else? I see so many past students in the room. I don't know if anybody, if anybody else would like to share a memory. Just let you think for a sec, just a moment. the in
Yeah.
Joy. I'll go ahead, Joy. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I got to be at Carnegie Mellon in the late 90s, and Marta came for a week to South Carolina to my private school where I was teaching middle school at the time. And I won't absolutely never forget having her there. And I took her all over town. I mean, she taught at Furman University, and then she taught at the governor's school, and I just took her everywhere and I ran her ragged. And she was, it was wonderful. And a couple of things that I remember specifically, she said, "What are you working on with these sixth graders?" And then she taught all 4 of my sixth grade classes. And I got to watch her, look at each class and then do something different with each one based on what they were doing. So that was an awesome lesson for me to go, oh, just because you are teaching the same class of age, you're not have to teach them the same thing because they're going to be at different levels. She really, she helped fix that one. And another moment was a 6th grader or 7th grader came bounding into the room, and my response was, "Oh, I should get him to settle down," And her response was, "Oh, will you do that again?" And so he went bounding around the room, and she played music for him, and then everyone was bounding around the room. And so it taught me so much to have her see the children and the students in such a different way. I'll never forget.
Those are wonderful stories. Thank you. And I really think so much of her legacy, remains in all of us, of course, and in the way that we continue to teach pedagogy. The Marta, what I think of as sort of the Marta focus or philosophy behind Dalcroze pedagogy is exactly what Joy's describing there. Like if we had to boil it down to sort of one set of ideas or one thing, it's what is happening in this group of students and how can we notice them, how can we see them, how can we support them, and how can we work with whatever they're giving us, as opposed to stop paying attention to them, teach your script. And so it's such a very, it's not just like, I assume that it's everywhere in the Dalcroze community, but it's a very specific, very strong thread in all of our pedagogy work still in the summer, particularly in the summer session, or any of our pedagogy work is having that model. And she would do it with all the different ages. Judy talked about the Post-it note lesson plan. I remember her coming into the room with, on the yellow Post-it note, was just dotted 8/16. And I thought, what is she doing? What is going to happen today? It says dotted 8/16. That's all it said. And she came in, nothing else in her hand. She put it in the center of the Steinway. And then damned if she didn't teach all morning long, 4 classes back to back, all different versions of spinning out. And that dotted 8/16 was in there, but she didn't have one script that she was sticking with. Another way that I would see her do it, and I remember being the student in this class where she did have a bit of a thick accent. And so if she wasn't in the mood to be extra clear, she didn't have to be. And if you weren't used to hearing accents, not everybody, people would say, I can't even understand what's being said. But it didn't matter. She'd look around. She said so few words. She'd look around and she'd say, top of class. We were all standing. Maybe we did a little stretch. And then she'd look at the room and she'd say, go. And then we'd all look. Everybody would look around at each other. What does she mean, go? Where everybody look around and everybody's freaking out. Am I going to do the wrong thing? And then somebody would always be like, I don't know. I think maybe she means this. And then that student would start to do something. And then Marta would look at it and go, okay, then. And then that's where she would start. Like she didn't need there to be this agreed upon first thing that was her grand idea. And there's something special about that, in that it took so much of the emphasis off of her. Like, as much as we dearly, dearly loved her and wanted to be around her, I joked for years that I would sell, if I wasn't married, I would sell all my belongings and camp out on her front step. Like that was and I really kind of meant it. Like I really just wanted to be around her. But there was something about the way that she was both amazing and yet not calling attention to herself. The attention was always kind of pushed back into the room on what are you doing and who are you? And I see you and we can work with this. And it was just such a beautiful model. Well, friends, as is the standard at the VDM, we could keep on going for a long time, and I hope everybody's wishing the conversation would go on as much as me. I think it's been a real joy for me to have a chance to talk about Marta Sanchez when it wasn't her birthday and it wasn't a holiday. It was just a good Tuesday. And so Thank you for sharing. Thanks for coming. We hope that you will come to Sylvie's masterclass on Saturday or Sunday, depending on where you live. We would love to see more people register for the entrepreneurship short course, depending on any version of want to create new programming. There'll be something for you in there. The meetups can be found at our calendar at virtualdalcroze.org. Subscribe to the calendar and you will get all the days and times converted into your time zone automatically. And please join the mailing list so that you don't miss out on the things that are going on. Emma?
Just real quick, one of our passions is to make this work that we love so much accessible and available to more people, to bring new people into these rooms. And so if somebody you know or yourself needs a little help to be able to make it to one of these opportunities, just let us know. We're going to make it happen for you, and we want you there. And if you have somebody who's never had an experience of this amazing work and they would like to join us for something, bring them along and we will figure it out. So we just really want to welcome new faces.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we'll hope to see you this weekend.